everybody, this is Jackson County Library Services, and we are doing Intro to Grant Writing tonight. We've got a few people on board with us, and as people join, I'll admit them. So, as I was saying just a couple minutes ago, a business librarian is someone who can help local entrepreneurs and small business and nonprofit find the information they need to make good decisions, whether that be online information, information from books, or finding people who can advise them. So I do all of those things. Alrighty, so how do I know what I know about grant writing? So keep in mind that as a librarian, I'm here to share information. And I have learned through an 8-week course. And I've also done some courses through Candid, which used to be GuideStar and merged with Foundation Center. So I've got a few months of learning under my belt that I've distilled into 4 separate workshops. So we'll go through that information as we learn together. And I want to give you a little tour about the library. So under research, you're going to see a lot of options, and we'll go into business and investment. And this is at the JCLS homepage. So you'll see me in a different incarnation than you see tonight, and a lot of resources available to you, depending on what it is you want to know. So these are different research guides. And to the right-hand side, you're also going to see my contact information, upcoming events, and some suggested books. Know that business and nonprofit is multifaceted, and if you have a specific interest, I can always find something for you. So those suggested books might not have what you're interested in, but I can find something for you that works for you. Okay, so let's also go under all databases, because there are resources that you can learn from inside of our databases. You can either go to subjects, get into business, and see everything that's associated with business, or clear your filters and find some interactive learning through Udemy. So I'll show you what it looks like when I log in. They're going to ask for my library card, and I've got that ready. Okay, and there's a 2-part sign-in. We're going to go through Google, and then we're going to go here, and here we are. So if you wanted more in-depth learning, you could type in handwriting. And there's a new trend to combine the word, but not all sources recognize that. Okay. So you can continue your learning through Udemy if you would like to obtain more information between sessions or after we're done. Okay, so let's go into introducing one another. And I will highly emphasize that we know one another, because a lot of what grant writing is about is the networking that you can do in order to build a foundation for the work that you're doing. So let's go ahead and start, and I'll start from the names that I have on the right-hand side of my screen. We've got Alan. Can you introduce yourself and what projects you're working on?
Well, my name is Alan Pointer, and I am a city councilor at the City of Lakeside, Oregon. And we're a city without a tax base, so we have no local property taxes, but so many of our projects are done with grants, and I want to learn more about that.
Awesome. And Margaret?
I work for Network Time Foundation. The Network Time Protocol is the foundational internet protocol that makes it possible for the internet to function. The internet uses time to talk to itself. and we are the people that maintain that protocol. It's the oldest running and most stable protocol on the internet, and the internet literally could not exist without it. And my dog's nose is right here. He wants to help. Anyway, so I guess the problem is that when the protocol was written, it was free and open source software. And our difficulty is going to large companies and saying, you can't exist without this protocol. We'd sure like some help. And they say, but it's free. And we say, no, 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 it's not free like free beer. It's free like free puppy. You have to take care of the puppy. You have to take it to the vet and maintain it and things like that. So we run into a lot of roadblocks when we're doing our grant situations because, like I said, the companies don't want to support us because they're saying, well, it's free. So.
Yep, grant writing is also about meeting the challenges that you face.
Yep.
So, and let's go to Christine. You're muted.
So, hi, I'm Christine. I am the Applegate Library Branch Manager. I have always wanted to figure out how to find money that is out there and available. So everything from my professional work to my personal interests, I'm looking to find out how to do it.
Awesome. And so Claire, can you introduce yourself and some projects that you're working on? You are muted currently.
Yes, so sorry, I just have to move it to another room. Yes, my name is Claire. My pronouns are they, them. I worked previously for the Jackson County Sexual Assault Response Team, but I'm not working for them anymore. But I've been doing a lot of LGBTQ organizing in Southern Oregon and in Jackson County recently, and I have no specific, well, I'm working on some projects, but I don't quite have any specific projects that I personally am working on for grant writing. Is that true? Maybe. Anyway, I'm just curious because I think grant writing is a really useful skill and something that can be used throughout my whole life. So that is what I'm excited about and why I'm here.
Okay, very, very cool. So I am excited to support everybody through the work that you're doing. And it looks like a new person is joining us. And we'll have them introduce themselves, but also there will be breakout sessions so you can meet one another and not worry about all of the first introductions if anybody missed. So Mary, can you introduce yourself and maybe what projects you're working on? Could you give us maybe a note in the chat if you're having some difficulty with your mic? So Mary, you have access to the chat. It is a little speech bubble at the bottom of your screen. When you move your mouse around, that toolbar is going to pop up, and one of those tools is your chat box. So let us know if you have any questions. We are going to move on though. Okay, so I am going to share my screen again. And we're going to get started with some information. Okay, and just let me know, can you see the screen that I'm sharing?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I will be reading some of what is on the screen, partially for accessibility reasons. So please bear with me if you're reading along as we talk. So we're going through Introduction to Grant Writing, understanding the basics, know yourself, build partnerships, and planning and case statements are some of the topics that we're going to be going over today. So the agenda is going to include building the context and building blocks, an introduction to the topics that we'll cover in the series. We'll have a question and answer session, a breakout session so that you can connect with one another to explore deeper some of the things that we've been talking about. Then we'll go and dive into building a case statement and all the details involved in that. And you'll have some time to break down what that means to you in the question and answer session and a breakout session. And then we're going to get into the main takeaways after that. Again, there are some library resources available to you. This may entice you to look at some of the books that we have available. You can get the books online through your devices or in physical form. And to the right-hand side, you're going to see Udemy that we covered in the beginning few minutes. Also, the library has a subscription to the Foundation Directory online through Candid. And again, Candid is a merger between Foundation Center and GuideStar. They offer a directory of foundations throughout the nation. And we're going to start taking a look at them in sessions 3 and 4. You really want to know the building blocks before you start talking to people who can fund your projects. So what is grant writing? It's a process of learning about yourself and the communities you serve, an opportunity to look at what partnerships you're nurturing. We're really going to be hitting partnerships pretty hard. A process of seeking and maintaining partnerships with foundations whose missions align with your organization's mission. And that is a really important aspect, because if you're engaging mission-driven grantsmanship, that means you understand yourself and who you're reaching out to, and you're more likely to be successful. So, why seek grant funding? Because you can have, you have identified an issue that addresses specific people, and you want to be part of the change needed to make a difference, and you want to make a change in the world. And there we go. Self-exploration is an important aspect as you're beginning your grant writing process. So again, mission-driven grantsmanship, a shared understanding and beliefs about the mission statement, excuse me, there we go, that you share with your organization. Your mission has to be clear, universally understood, and current. Your organization's story, also clear, concise, and compelling. Your mission, vision, and values relate directly to programs and services at your organization. So all of these things we're going to be covering as we continue through the series. You really want to be careful that your mission is the center of the work that you're doing and where you're building from as you continue. So a mission statement is a shared understanding of your organization's culture and what you're doing for the communities you serve and why that's important. And partnerships. So you want to create and nurture true partnerships long before sending out proposals. And what that means is that you are going to be actively seeking solutions to the problems and barriers between you and getting your projects done before you seek funding. And that means working with people to get the things you need, to get the expertise you need. Whatever it is, you're working with people to solve those problems before you ask for money. You want to share resources, responsibilities, risks, and rewards. So a true partnership is going to involve you sharing the stress as well as the benefits of doing the work together. Demonstrate that you are dedicated to developing the relationships needed to find sustainable and creative solutions. And planning. So if you thought about grant writing as a recipe, 4 parts are planning and 1 part is writing. So a lot of the step work that you do before you even put your fingers on the keyboard are a huge part of the whole process. And know your grant maker. So before you ever reach out You're going to want to know who they are, what they're looking for, what they hope to achieve through grant making. Know this before approaching them, and build a relationship with your chosen funders long before submitting a proposal. So whenever you can, if you realize that there is a funder in your area who works on funding projects similar to yours, get to know them, go to their functions, learn who they are, get to know them on, maybe a first name basis if you can. And your proposal is pretty similar to a business plan. We're admitting another person. Yeah, here we go. So your proposal is very similar to a business plan. In this case, we're looking for grant funding. In the case of a small business, you might be looking for a loan. Very similar, and very similar amount of detail that you'll need to know and be able to convey. So following the rules. Each funder might have a different set of rules, and you're going to want to follow them pretty precisely. So the rules are non-negotiable, and if the funder has told you that they want something particular to happen or to see in your proposal, then you need to make sure to present that. The rules vary, and you want to create a new proposal for each funder. So that means that you might recycle some of the information in your proposal, but you really don't want to just give it wholesale the same thing to every funder. So common sense. Let common sense guide the way as you are going through your grant writing process. And what does that mean? That means, like, don't let anxiety and fear dictate what you do. If you haven't done it before, take a deep breath and know that your life experience is going to be a big part of how you navigate the process. So, for example, if there's a strict page limit, should you eliminate headers and bullet points? Probably not. I would say make sure that you are accommodating the needs of someone who is working quickly in order to make a good decision. So if you're reading quickly, what's going to help you read more accurately? And your partnership efforts. So does the funder want to see a description? I would, and most people would. So you can ask the funder if they're willing for you to include that. And if you don't understand the instruction, what does the funder really want in this section? I don't understand the language, whatever it is. Be sure to clarify for yourself exactly what part you don't understand. Gather that for yourself. And when you're ready, contact the funder. So also, if you don't fit the guidelines of a funder, should you apply anyway? Nope. One strategy that you want to keep in mind is that if there is a new funder in town and they are funding a lot of different projects, you may want to kind of sit back and watch what, excuse me, as I make sure that dog is quiet. There we go. Working from home is always fun. You would want to, in the case that there's a funder whose guidelines that you don't fit, make sure that you maintain awareness of them and what their functions are. Attend their functions if you can, if it's applicable to you, and learn as they grow, learn as you have more and more contact with them. Their funding limitations may change over time, and you might at some point fit within their guidelines. So 9 questions and a summary. So let's take a look at what we're going to be covering in this series. So We'll be exploring the questions you need to be asking and how to begin the work of filling in the blanks. So 1, again, know yourself. Be able to describe who you are as an organization. What is your organization's name and location? Your history is a form of credibility. What have you been doing in your community in the past? And so if you can describe what you've been doing and who you've been working with, again, that's a major form of credibility. What is your organization type? And what is your organization value? And what is its culture? Communicate context and purpose. Describe the specific need or issue. So in order to give this information, you want to have a very particular format and give information that that someone reading can understand has some vetting behind it. So give a statistic. Don't use any jargon. State why your project is important. State who and where the people are that will be served. And we're going to go over more of this information later on as well. Your vision. So what changes do you want to achieve? What will be different? What will success look like? When is the project finished? Provide these answers with numbers. What partnerships will be involved in the project? So one thing you want to avoid is an aspirational statement. We hope to, we want to, we will strive toward achieving. You want to say, we are going to do these things, and these are the numbers of people we will be engaging. That type of thing. So your work plan. What are the major steps needed to make the changes happen? So some things that are probably going to be in your work plan, no matter what project you're doing, are staffing, logistics, marketing and outreach, implementation, follow-on. Follow-on is all of the tasks and the ongoing things that need to happen before your project officially begins with funding and after that funding is spent. And your evaluation is going to be a part of your work plan. So your partnerships. What organizations have a vested interest in working with you and your organization and the people and issues that your organization addresses? There are 2 different types of partnerships. Natural partnerships, so organizations that work with similar communities to yours and serve a similar purpose. Organizations that typically work together are the natural partnerships. Then there are the creative and unusual partnerships. So maybe there's an organization that does something very different from what you do. So you want to see, well, are there any resources that you both need? Can you collaborate over that? Can you work together to meet those needs together? Your evaluation. What tools, data, information will you use to determine whether your project has been a success? And document as you go. Incorporate that documentation into what you already do. One of the challenges that people kind of create for themselves occasionally is creating a documentation process that is separate from the project that they're doing and the service that they provide to a community. You do not want to create a situation where you have to leave what you're doing in order to document the work that you're doing. Make sure that you can continue documenting as you work. So resources. What resources are needed in order to successfully complete all the steps in your project? So in a later workshop, we're going to talk about logic models and how that helps you create a visualization of the work that you're doing, all the way from what resources you think you need to how you're going to use those resources, and like how you're going to organize those resources into the project and how that project relates to your mission statement. So your budget. What is the approximate total cost if you had to pay for everything? So we'll go over the frameworks of total cost. Don't worry about this too much. Already down. Don't worry about the total cost too much because we're going to go over the frameworks needed to understand how to report the cost of things that you didn't pay for and the cost of things that you need to pay for and the things that you'll use funding in order to pay for. So identify where your project fits. What broad categories of community needs or opportunities does your project address? Each funder has a mission to serve and communicates in, has a mission to serve communities in particular capacities. So again, each funder is going to have a very specific focus. And that means that you need to identify whether your project fits within that focus. So your summary, think about this as your elevator pitch. So in one sentence, summarize your project idea. What will you do, when, with whom, where, why, in what order? Or excuse me, in order to do what? And so you want to be sure that you can communicate clearly and concisely what your project is. So when you are going out into the community and talking about your project, be able to give that elevator pitch. And this is also going to help as you're writing your proposals. So let's go ahead and do some question and answer. Do we have any questions at this point?
I have I don't know if it's really a question when you're talking about the structure of the funds or how they fund things is absolutely non-negotiable. I'm going to slightly disagree with that because I think an important thing for especially for nonprofits is that you avoid targeted funds, because I have seen organizations where basically they had to close up shop because the reporting requirements for targeted funds were greater, basically took their entire budget to create the documentation for targeted funds. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so when I say follow the rules, you really want to be in communication with the funder. So if there's a situation where you might not be able to follow the rules in the writing of your proposal, that's an opportunity to talk to the funder. So there are some situations where the rules really don't bend at all, and especially in government grant writing. So federal funds, you will need to follow the rules to the T. There have been examples such as someone who had an inch margin, and when it was printed out, it was 9/10 of an inch, submitted via paper, didn't qualify. So
and I will agree with that, is with government funds, there is no wiggle room. And again, as a not-for-profit, then you have to be careful and say, do we have the budget to fulfill all the requirements of this?
yeah, and that's part of your planning process. So that's why we talk about the recipe of 4 parts planning and 1 part writing. Know who you're applying to, know what the rules are. So that way you don't get surprised. Is there anybody who has another question? And if you haven't written a grant before, if you're not familiar and you're like, I don't even know what I would ask at this point, that is okay. So some key concepts for this are the amount of writing versus planning. You're always going to be doing more planning than writing. Funders are following a similar process on their end. So when organizations are contacting them, asking questions, submitting proposals, they are on their end doing their part. Your Your completed case statement is essentially a source document. And what that means is you can, for the most part, recycle it as you write different proposals over time. Each funder is going to use different language. So just be aware that you might have 3 different phrasings from different funders for the same thing. And we're going to go over some do's and don'ts of terminology. So the basic elements of a case statement are: what is the specific need, issue, or opportunity that you're addressing? How was this problem or opportunity identified? Be able to give evidence of what this problem is, where it's rooted. So what? Why should anyone care? So, and don't think about that cynically. Think about it more in a sense of why should someone care? How can you prove that? Who is affected by the issue? And what are their characteristics? So you're probably serving a community with potentially a diverse number of people. And so you want to be able to describe them. What are their needs? What are their experiences? What are their lives like? What is the geographic scope of the issue? Are you dealing within one small community? Is it for one organization, one school? Are you working within a county or a state geographic scope? And what are the benefits to the community if this need is met? So what's going to change if their needs get met? And a good case statement, part 1, makes a clear connection to the purpose and goals of the organization. It has identified and reasonable dimensions. It is supported by statistical evidence. It is supported by statements from authorities, including the people affected. And it talks from the perspective of people to be served. So part 2, a good case statement is developed with input from the people served. It leads with the problem and the services that you're going to provide, not the lack of what you need in order to do the project. And it doesn't make unsupported claims. So if you make a claim, make sure that you have data behind it so that people understand, the funders can understand what it is you're talking about. And your case statement doesn't use jargon or acronyms. So if you're used to using an acronym just off the tip of your tongue on a daily basis, that might be a barrier for your funder to understand what you're talking about. And you might have a community that has specific needs that has a language built around it. Your funder might not know about that. So your case statement doesn't use jargon or acronyms, and it's clear, concise, compelling, and interesting. Okay, and writing pitfalls that you want to avoid. Don't write statements that cause boredom. So things that people in general already know about your project, how it affects a community that people generally understand. If your project addresses an issue that is common in your area, don't overstate the obvious. Just state what you need to say and move on within your case statement. And don't over-describe the solution or your proposed approach. Conciseness is going to be really key here. So writing to include. Writing that describes the community you're serving, that makes it clear that you're serving people and not treating humans like statistics. So as much as you can, you want to humanize the people that you're talking about. And tell the story behind the statistics. How did those numbers come to be as you're describing people? Why should the funder care? So this is a question that you want to answer. So what? Why does that matter? And in order to do what? So take these questions back to your organization, back to the group that you're working with, and ask someone these questions. And each time they answer, ask them again. So why does what they just said matter? And you want to go through it 5 times. And this is repetitive and it's on purpose. Because once you've gotten to either the breakdown of society or the burden on the taxpaying public, then you know that you've identified all the reasons why your project matters, and you can describe them more concisely. So if you were the funder, again, if you're looking at this writing, what's easier for you to read? Are you going to be able to cram through, I don't know, how many proposals might be received at one time if it looks like the left-hand example? Or are you going to be more inclined to understand and digest the information if it has headers and subheaders and it's formatted? And that might be a decision that you have to make carefully about how to be concise, how to make it visually easy to consume, and how to include all the information that's needed. So building your case statement. This is a quick example, and you can find other examples online, and I can help you if you need a little bit more information. But this quick example is, though it may be surprising, people with menstrual cycles pay more than those without 42% of the time for hygiene products. So I avoided some jargon there. I didn't include pink tax, socioeconomics, psychographics. And in order to prove this, how do you know? You want to provide a peer-reviewed study. Why should anyone care? So the population that we're talking about has inadequate access to hygiene. Make it relatable, describe it. So low-income youth in high school struggle with self-confidence when trying to feel and smell clean due to the lack of access to products that are too expensive. And additional statistics the funder should know. Studies showing additional impacts. So you want to be able to put all of this together to create a very clear picture. And it's never about the things that you need in order to do the project. It's about the people you're serving. So, for example, you might need laptops for your program, but it's not about the laptops. What can the community you serve accomplish if children have access to computers? And put the pieces together. So to represent your case statement, you should be able to quickly relate what an after-school program needs laptops. Why? In order to give children access to technology and tech fluency. Because all children deserve equitable access to technology, education that will affect their success in school and work throughout their lives. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about any questions that you have.
So I mean, I've not ever written anything. I'm assuming that if I were to start to write a grant, I would have the instructions in front of me and I could follow those. When you just used that example of the laptops. So in other words, you're not supposed to present what the solutions are. You're just supposed to say that if there's funding, then you can do the things that you need to do for the community.
So yeah, you really do want to focus on the people that you're serving. So whenever you can put a highlight on what it is you're going to do if you have funding, the problems that you're going to solve and the people it's going to affect, that's what you want to lead with. There is a space in your work plan for what you're going to do, what you need to do those things, and how it's going to affect the community. So we are at a different time in the series going to talk about the things that are needed and how to describe them.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to do a fun exercise. So let's go ahead and practice. So what? Why does it matter? In order to what? And we'll go with one person at a time. So Margaret, you have a very specific thing that you're working on. So
Yes.
do you feel comfortable going through this process with me?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so what about your program?
The network time protocol makes it possible for the internet to exist. If the project is not properly maintained and funded, it won't cause a complete breakdown of society tomorrow, but it will cause the internet to eventually break and fail.
Okay, so can you describe a little bit more why that matters?
I'm sorry?
Can you describe a little bit more about why that matters?
At this point in the world, the internet is the main way that the human race is communicating with each other. And internet access is vitally important, even in third world countries where basically the smartphones have completely superseded all other methods of communication.
Very, very true. And so you want to continue thinking along those lines. And in order to what? What is this going to do for people?
In some ways, people, I mean, if the network time protocol is properly funded and keeps going, no one's ever going to notice. In a way, it's part of the internet's autonomic nervous system. It happens so far in the background that no one ever sees it or hears it or anything. What people will notice is if it breaks and stops working.
Okay. So then we would go over that several times over, because you really want to go through this question and answer process really carefully so that you're going from one problem and realizing, oh, well, that relates to another problem, and that relates to a bigger problem, and going from your local space out into the world.
And when you're talking about something like network time protocol, you get out into the world very quickly.
Okay. Can you describe that a little bit?
Oh, well, so again, the way the internet talks to itself, the way network servers talk to each other as they use time. The time has to be correct, concise. It's, transactions are time and date stamped. And that's the way a lot of computer security happens, is if the time and date stamps don't agree, then the websites will kick each other out. And it's, lost my train of thought there. So basically, this protocol makes it possible for the network servers. This isn't like your individual computer, although there is network time running on your individual computer, but this is more the, enormous banks of computers that talk to enormous banks of computers. And that's, I mean, the actual backbone of the internet. And this protocol is the language they use to talk to each other.
Okay. And so what's one of the first things that's going to break down if it doesn't work?
Security. A lot of computer security is going to stop working.
Okay. So, and I don't want to make us go through this 5 times in this session, but you do want to do that on your own and with your colleagues, the people who are working with you on this project, so that you can really understand all the different points where you go through your problem understanding of how what you're doing affects communities, how it affects people, and how to describe that. So Claire, do you want to give a try at something that you're working on and go through this question and answer process?
Sure, yeah, let's give it a go.
Okay, so what?
So sorry, could you say, so what, as in, like, we could talk about the listening session project, for example.
Okay. So what does it do?
Oh, what does it do? So the LGBTQ listening project is assessing the need of LGBTQ people in Jackson, Josephine County. That is what it's doing.
Why does it matter?
It matters because there are no organizations or established community projects that is specifically supporting LGBTQ people in Southern Oregon.
Okay. And what is this project intended to do by the end? In order to what?
It is intending to, so a couple of things, but intending to assess community need so that organizations that exist can, organizations that exist can mobilize around what actual needs are. So being able to not create services that are redundant or not wanted or not helpful, but to create resources and services that are actually going to benefit this community, this diverse community of people. Also to connect resources to LGBTQ people, because there isn't like one organization that houses all of these resources, and so there's a lot of fragmentation. And so to be able to create something that maps and houses these resources in an updated way. Yeah, and there's another, the third piece I think would be creating wider community and connection between LGBTQ people, because we live in a small town rural area and there isn't really any kind of hub, so it could be very isolating and there isn't a lot of visibility.
Okay. So if we're going to get a little bit closer to maybe the breakdown of society, let's ask the question again. Why does it matter?
Oh my gosh, such a big question. It matters because in terms of the breakdown of society, there are, and then this would be where you could relate it to things that we found because we did a survey. But for example, something like 80% of young people feel like they have to move out of the area to have a good life. Or I think it's something like 70% of trans people don't feel safe in living in Southern Oregon outside of their homes. And so in terms of the breakdown of society, I feel like you could really go big, but it is severely impacting people's ability to live in Southern Oregon in a way that does not impact straight people or heterosexual people or cisgender people. Yeah.
Okay. And like, again, take some time to continue going through this and, you know, even write down the answers that you come up with as you gradually move from the local thing that you're doing into the broader and broader reasons why it matters as you get closer and closer to the breakdown of society, so that you really, really understand all the reasons why it matters and what you're doing. And Christine, do you feel comfortable maybe trying to go through this with some of the ideas that you have in serving the library?
I think I could. I mean, I certainly could use the pointers if I'm going in the wrong direction. So what? In the Applegate community, there are no places to meet. There's one place that is a for-profit, so there's no community center there. Typically, the people, once they come home to Applegate, they don't want to head back into town. So this would afford an opportunity. If there was a patio and a bigger conference room, it would afford the community a community center.
Okay, and why does it matter?
It matters because the community is a pretty cohesive community, and they don't have another place to be, to get together. And in addition to not a physical building, there's sometimes Wi-Fi issues out in the mountainous areas of the Applegate. So it matters that they have an opportunity to meet face to face, which I still think is a great thing in the world. So it matters that way, that there's face to face ability to meet.
In order to do what?
In order to accomplish the goals that the different organizations or different groups might want to get together and meet. I'm finding there's a lot of little groups like the Applegate Watershed Council, and there's different irrigation neighborhoods. You know, it's typically a few people that try to get together to meet in order to solve the issues that affect the Applegate communities.
So it sounds like you have an opportunity to kind of delve deeper into the ability of people connecting to maybe solve problems in the area, and to keep resources running through communities as these conversations are facilitated.
Yeah.
So like maybe don't focus on like the organizational aspect, but more so what are communities going to, on a broad scale, be able to accomplish?
Okay. I definitely know that is personal and professional fault, if you will, that I do focus on the negative, what's not there. And what you're saying is we should be focusing on what we want to be there, and what the ability will be.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. See why I'm still in infancy?
So, and this is a really good opportunity to kind of look at, you know, the fact that we're not going to be focusing on the things that we don't have or the objects that we need. We're going to be focusing on how our work is going to be affecting the communities we serve and being able to describe that.
Okay.
So yeah, just keep these questions with you. And so in closing, what are some of the things that you
I mean, is it ever advisable that you send in a grant without having anybody review it? Probably not.
No, I would say no.
Okay.
There may be some situations where you're working independently and you don't have enough funding for someone to be paid to look over your proposal. And in that case, you might be doing everything you can just by submitting a proposal.
I don't want to do that.
But if you are working with colleagues, if you are working in an organization, you should be able to work together to peer review.
Okay.
And we're going to go over the some of the planning process in later sessions that'll help kind of identify, well, who should be writing the grant? How many people should be writing the grant? Who are your potential collaborators? How are you going to strengthen your process as you try to make sure that you have something to, something of quality to submit to your funder? So, and there'll be a lot more detail on that later on. Though that sounds really vague right now, it will become more detailed. And so what are some of the things that you're taking away with you today that maybe you didn't have before, or maybe we delved a little bit deeper into? Just anything that comes to mind.
I'm liking in your slides, you break things down nicely into lists. I'm a big list maker, so.
Awesome. Yeah, it's nice to be able to have those lists. And we're also going to be talking about the perspective that you'll need to keep in mind as you move through the process, because those nice tidy lists, though they are so comforting, they're not always available. So we'll be kind of looking at the broad sky level view, the tactical view, and how to combine those.
I'm assuming the slides will be available afterwards, right?
They are actually embedded in the link that I shared as we started.
Perfect. Thank you.
You know,
So,
I like what you said a lot about, you know, to just to highlight what's not there. That's an important point for me to remember, that perspective.
yeah, because if you're bringing a project to a funder, they want to fund
needy.
something. Yeah, well, I mean that, but also they want to fund what's going to happen. What are you going to do? Do you have a clear idea?
Yeah.
Have you outlined what it is you're going to accomplish? And are you clear-minded about that? And if you're just saying what you don't have, then maybe you're not so clear-minded and they have no evidence of what you have planned.
Yeah. Well, I got a lot of work to do on that.
And we'll do it together.
Okay.
Okay, so again, I want to remind you that that link that I shared with you in the beginning contains a lot of information that you can continue using to learn as we progress. We also will be giving a certificate of completion if you attend all 4 sessions. And that certificate will have your name, it'll have what you learned, and you'll be able to present that to your collaborators, your places of work, whatever place needs to know what you've done to prepare to be able to write a grant. Thank you, everybody. Well, you have a good night, and I hope to see you at the next session.